What's up, Amazon sellers? Happy Sunday, and welcome back to the weekly live news and Q&A show, where we'll share a couple pieces of news with you guys and break down a few ideas. I'm Chris Grant, and to my right is my co-host, the polypragmatic Chris Rasick. Now, for those of you who may be new here, our job is to try to make your life as an Amazon seller a little bit easier. Maybe you've got questions about retail arbitrage. Perhaps you're a little confused about online arbitrage, or maybe you want to dive into wholesale. Heck, maybe you've got a Keepa chart that is just confusing the heck out of you and keeping you up at night. Well, you can ask us those questions, and we will help any way we can over the next 60 to 90 minutes. All right, let's dive in. Chris, how's your week starting?
The week's starting okay. I do have a legitimate question for you, though.
Okay.
And it's probably good to ask it on air. I got a couple questions off air too, but yeah, no, it's just advice. Now I'll set the stage. You've heard me say this multiple times, but I'll set the stage for the sake of the show, right? I have a love-hate relationship with my VAs, right? Mm-hmm. I'm a horrible boss. The jury's out on whether I'm a worse employee or a worse boss. I'm not very strong in either one, right? So I get cranky, I get moody, all this stuff, right? So I'm going through my leads from my VA, and the way I have it set up, they have an optional Saturday shift that they can work up to 5 hours, right? That's where I cap it, which they take advantage of 100% of the time, right? So my longest tenured VA has a newborn baby, their first child, right? So I understand their challenges, and the baby's been in and out of the hospital. So I have that whole thing going on, and I've noticed his icon in the Google Sheet off hours, which just fine. I cap the hours no matter what. I don't care. I don't care when you work, you can. If it's 1 a.m. or something, and that's when the baby is finally asleep and you want to catch up on your work, I have no problem with that. So going through, and I've also told you how much I get so annoyed at these just fabricated prices, current FBA price that they end up putting on the spreadsheet, right? And I'm really trying to train that out of them. I'm looking for it, and I bring it up and I put it in the group chat. And I'm like, hey, look at this. I have them look at the Rev Seller box because they have access to my Rev Seller. And you'll see, 30 day is a $19 average, 90 day is 20, and then the 180-day average is 21. But they're putting it on the sheet at 30 and change, right? Mm-hmm. And there's no evidence it's ever sold at that price. So I'm going through their Saturday's batch of leads this morning, and my longest tenure VA is putting stuff that is clearly has not been updated, right? They put a lead in that said the rank 90-day average rank was under 200,000. It was actually 600,000. Had no sales. As far as I could tell, the data that he pulled this from, minimum 8-9 months old, right? Mm-hmm. So somewhere along the line, he's pulling old data and he didn't even bother to update it, right? And then there was another one that the data appeared to be at the newest 6 months old, right? So basically all of his Saturday leads, I also I make them for every hour they work, they have to give me at least one lead, right? I set that quota. Basically all 5 from Saturday are just junk. I mean, it's old information. He didn't even bother to put any work. He essentially didn't work that shift, So I put a couple examples. I said, look, show me where this sells at the price that you put on the spreadsheet. I put 2 examples in the group chat, and then I sent him a personal message. And I said, this data is old. If it's even from the resources that I provided for you, which means you're not doing the work that I pay you for. Mm-hmm. So he hasn't gotten back to me. It's in the middle of the night in the Philippines. But my question to you is, how do I handle this? What would you do in this situation?
Well, since this is, see, I don't know. I'm not a great boss either. And I know that maybe I have this online persona of being a stickler, but I'm just a big teddy bear on the inside, especially when it comes to people just having kids and things like that.
Mhm.
But I would imagine that the right thing to do is to acknowledge, like, listen, I know that you're probably going through a rough spot at the moment. Like, I get that. I remember having a newborn, newborns, I've done it a few times. And I know that, your baby's having some health trouble. So maybe there's some issues there. But on the other hand, like, we've got to make sure that you either don't do the work at all to get the extra pay, or, like, it's got to be right. And I mean, you gave him examples. So maybe you just say, hey, listen, we're going to have to go to a three strike policy where this is strike one. And, after strike three, I'm going to have to either cut off Saturdays as an income stream, or I'm going to have to let you go because, like, something is not getting through. We need to get better. And then I'd probably end that with, this is obviously uh, a failure on my part because I have not given you the training that you need, even if you have, but the buck stops here, kind of thing. And then maybe ask and be like, listen, I need some honesty, because this is in a tough spot. So I need to know, what do you need in the way of learning resources to turn this around? And then leave that responsibility on him. And hopefully he tells you the truth.
Yeah, yeah. That's see, I was tempted to yank Saturdays immediately. Yeah.
Mhm.
I actually had that written out to him and deleted it before sending it. Kind of made it more. I trimmed it and made it more open ended. Just to see, what kind of information I get back from him. So, yeah. It's just I don't know. It's tough. It's tough to know what the right answer is because the reprimand potentially puts more pressure on what is always already a highly stressful household, I'm sure. So,
Mhm. Yeah.
but at the same
That's
time, I'm not running a charity either.
that's exactly right. Yeah, the only reason this job exists is because there's not only an economic benefit to him, there's an economic benefit to you, and there has to be. I
Right.
mean, uh, I think too many. I don't know. It seems like too many people here in the U.S., don't think that way about businesses, but as business owners, like, it's pretty clear that that's the way it needs to be.
Hmm.
So,
So yeah, that's
yeah.
that's how my Sunday started. And you know what? It started. It ignited a financial reckoning within me. I started firing texts off to family members that owed me money, and like I got I got all fired up. I woke up with some vinegar on Sunday morning, like, give me an update on that $500 you owe me, and then text this person like, hey,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah. So, well, I'm in a little bit of the same boat, man. This morning,
yeah,
just an absolute brutal takedown. I mean, you're a dad. You've got some girls, and we know that sometimes kids' mouths get ahead of their brains. And so this morning at 10:30 last night, my son comes to me and he's like, "Hey, Dad, I really want to go to this place with my buddy and his family." And I'm like, it's 10:30 at night. How am I supposed to talk to their parents, make sure that's cool? But he's like, I already got him on the phone. I'm like, okay. So we chat, and he's like, yeah, happy to have Wyatt. Be great to have him with us. He's like, we're leaving at 7:30. I'm like, okay. I will be there at 7:15. So we leave the house at 6:45 to make sure we get there on time on a Sunday morning. Now, that I am not an early bird. I prefer the evenings, although I am forced quite often to be up in the morning. But we're driving along, and on the way, I'm like, you know what? It's freaking early. Why don't I stop? I'll buy the parents some coffee. I'll get the kids a couple of donuts. Let them get some sugar in them before they go and play all day long. And so we do that. Hop back in the car, and Wyatt looks over at me. He's like, "Hey, Dad." He's like, "How many of these donuts are for you?" And you know that I've been trying to lose some lbs here lately, and I'm like, "Yeah, bud, I appreciate that, but I've been doing really good. I've been really strict. My moral masochism is working, and no sweets for me." And I'm like, I hit another milestone this morning, and he's like, "Oh, what was that?" And so I tell him, and I'm like, I hit this much weight down, and he stops for a second. He looks over at me, and he just says, "Well, when are you going to see some progress?" And then he pats my belly. And I'm like, "Oh man." And of course, I know that he doesn't mean it in a way that, he's not like trying to hurt my feelings. He's just, saying what is in his mind. But little does he know that he just put a bunch of kindling on a fire that's already been brewing. So
Oh man, I mean that's that's brutal, but but also fuel, right?
yes. Yeah.
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 So
Chips on shoulders are not necessarily a bad thing.
it's true. Man.
All right. In the early 1980s, there was this little known investor named Peter Lynch. He ran the Magellan Fund over at Fidelity. Now, he had this edge, right? He didn't just read the Wall Street reports or open up his Bloomberg terminal. He actually walked the mall floors. He watched what people were buying. He listened to customer complaints, and he was able to spot trends before the market caught on because he had feet on the ground. Now, his strategy turned a really small mutual fund into one of the best performing funds in history, averaging 29% annual over 13 years. Peter Lynch, he didn't just rely on the noise, he relied on signals. And that's exactly what my newsletter, Friday Finds for Smart Amazon Sellers, delivers. Every Friday at 7:40 p.m. Eastern, I try to help you cut through the noise and just get the alpha. You get Amazon trends, you get arbitrage insights, you get retail patterns, whatever I'm seeing, whatever I see being tested, whatever is working. I don't add any fluff, except for maybe the weekly meme. That's not recycled Reddit threads. It's field notes. It's delivered once a week directly to your inbox. So if you want to get access to this, head over to cleartheshelf.com. You can subscribe right at the top or read one of the blog posts absolutely free. There's likely be a pop-up there. Hit the subscribe button, read it every Friday, use it every Monday, and profit the whole year over at cleartheshelf.com. All right.
I as you're saying that, I wonder how many years it's been since I've missed one of your newsletters. And that's not like no exaggeration. Like, I mean, I think I've been reading it. Is it 5 years old that you've been doing? How long you been doing it?
It is 4 to 5 years old. Before it was popular, is when I started it.
Yeah. So are we allowed to talk about the name change, the name tweak?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that so? It used to be 5 Things Friday. That's how I knew it
Yes.
for a long, long time. And you changed it to, what is it now? 5 Things.
It's 5 smart things for Amazon sellers. Or sorry,
Okay.
Friday finds for smart Amazon sellers.
Okay. Are we testing, or is that?
It is. It is a test. I'm not completely happy with it. I like 5 Things Friday. I haven't really seen a change in the open rates, so I probably don't have enough data yet before I move on to the next subject line. But I like 5 Things Friday. I wanted something that was a little bit more descriptive. And I was hoping that it would increase open rates even by 1%. But that is not happening. It is fairly flat. So I'll probably test something again in another couple of weeks. So you want me to go back?
I don't know. It's just how that's the only way I've known it for several years. So I was just curious
Yeah.
if it had to do with gradual formatting change, or you were just trying to play with the title a little bit.
Yeah. No, just play with the title a little bit. See if because you get the subject line in an email, and then you can do two things. You can either leave the subheader line blank and it will just pull from the email body,
Mhm.
or you can add in some subheader and it will show that up in your Gmail or wherever you read your emails. And so I like A/B test all of that to try to see, does something perform better. So if I can land on something that gets me, so I'm sitting at about a 32 to 33% open rate on Friday emails, and that's by the time Monday comes around. I'd
Mhm.
love to get that to 35%. Um, and maybe I
Yeah.
need to clean up my email list. There's some people in there who, don't really open it ever, and so I should do that. But that is painful for me, so I've been putting it off longer than I should.
That's, I feel that. I uh I was thinking about it. Like, sometimes I don't even want to send an email just because I take unsubscribe so personally,
Right.
like I send an email, but I can't afford to lose that many subscribers, which is completely ridiculous, but that's where my lizard brain goes.
Absolutely. All right, guys, we're going to get to a little bit of news, and we actually got a jam-packed show today. Going to get to a little bit of news. We, of course, are going to take your questions. Make sure to drop them in the chat. We will get to them. But first thing on the docket, Amazon just made monitoring ASINs a whole lot easier. Amazon dropped a business reports update that actually kind of feels like it was built for sellers. It's called performance alerts. You can now set up a custom alert group that'll automatically ping you when your ASINs hit certain thresholds, like when sales drop, when traffic falls off, or when performance starts to spike. So here's what you can do: you can create up to 5 alert groups. You can set up to 5 custom conditions per group, and you can monitor up to 10 ASINs per group. This obviously was not built for the arbitrage seller. It was built for the brand owner, the private label seller, but that doesn't mean that you can't take advantage of it as an arbitrage seller as well. You can choose your tracking based on day over day, week over week, month over month. All right. So now, why would this be helpful? Well, let's say your top selling ASIN and you've got a replen. Let's say it suddenly drops 30% in sales this week. Well, now you get an email and you don't have to just say, oh, I haven't seen that in my orders screen here lately. No more digging through CSV files or refreshing business reports a couple of times a day. You want to know if your product detail page views tanked yesterday or if conversion rate dipped on your best replen. Well, now you don't have to guess. Amazon is just going to tell you as it happens. Now, why does this matter? Well, it matters for a couple of reasons. You can do a couple of things. You can get ahead of suppressed listings or traffic drops. If an ASIN's sales or sessions fall off a cliff, this can give you a bit of an early warning. You can investigate. Is there something missing? Is there something wrong? Is there a buy box issue? Did the product detail page get changed? Is there a change in the number of competition so that maybe you need to go and change your pricing? Now you'll be able to know. You can catch seasonality spikes that you might miss manually. Maybe if sales jump unexpectedly, you get an alert, you get a chance to double down, you can adjust your pricing to make the product slow down a little bit, or you could reorder faster if that's a possibility. And so, Chris, I guess I'm curious. Do you think this is Amazon responding to Amazon sellers wanting a little bit more control, or are they? Is this just them trying to get ahead of bad PR around data access and a looming FTC lawsuit down the road? Like, why would they actually put some real work into this?
Well, I think it's because they have some sort of campaign going to cater to brands. I think it's probably in connection with some of the things that we're seeing with the regatings. I think it's as part of and it all stems from the Section 3s through Q4. I think I think the regatings are due to some sort of, like I said, campaign to get more brands to sign up for brand registry. They probably have, I assume they took a massive amount of data. I've said it multiple times. I think they probably, looked at trends, looked at brands that are more likely to be counterfeit and whatnot. And then, of course, they have their history of the brands, any interaction that they've had as far as third-party sellers and issues and counterfeit filings and IP filings and all that. So they obviously have a record of the communication with the brands. So I think as part of this, they probably talked to a whole bunch of these brands and did some outreach and said, we have brand registry. You filed X number of thousand of counterfeit complaints and did and just kind of pitched it to some brands. And that is, before trolls, take your fingers off the keyboard, pump the brakes. That is not the same as Amazon going fully brand direct. I did not say that, nor do I think that. We can fight about that another time. So I think they're trying to enhance the experience for brands. Make brand registry more attractive, provide some additional tools for some of these brands, and I think it's a pitch. Then we're just kind of riding the coattails of something that they're doing with somebody else in mind, as usual.
Yeah, I would agree with that. All right. Now, again, just another reminder, guys, if you have a question about Amazon, your Amazon business, OA, RA, whatever it is, make sure to drop it in the chat. It's a little slow today. I know it's a Sunday. I know it's nice out in most of the country. So I don't expect a whole lot of people here, but let us know if you have a question. We will get to it here very shortly. I am an absolute sucker for pie charts, bar graphs, and just long lists of numbers. I don't know what it is, but I just go Rain Man on that kind of stuff. And I came across an article that satisfied all these cravings last week. So want to break down where Amazon actually stands right now, because even for those of us who keep our finger on the pulse, the scale is staggering. So let's start with users and customers. 310 million active global users on Amazon. 230 million of those are in the United States alone. 2024 data is not available yet, but Amazon got 2.72 billion with a B unique monthly visits in 2023. So that's 2.72 billion unique visits every single month. That's a ton of traffic. It's just insane. The only thing that is going to get more is going to be Google, YouTube. Maybe there's one or two other sites above Amazon, but Amazon's got to be top 5, I would imagine. 25% of Americans shop on Amazon weekly. All right. The only bigger moat for weekly shopping trips is going to be the local grocery store. That's it. The average American spends $91.75 per month. But in Tennessee, that number jumps to $124.22 per month. Yeah, who knew, right? Prime membership. Prime has 230 million members globally. 165 million of those in the US in 2023. We actually talked about this not too long ago. That number went above 168 million. It was like teetering on 169 million by the end of 2024. They did not expect to get to 169 million until the end of 2025. So they are ahead of pace there. 74% of all Prime members are in the US or American. The average Prime member spends $1,400 annually, which is between 2 and 3 times the spend of a non-Prime shopper. Prime Day in 2023 pulled in $12.9 billion, which was an 8.7% an increase over year. We know that 2024 was bigger. We know that 2025 is going to be a 4-day event rather than a 2-day event. And how long ago do you think it was that Prime Day events pulled in less than $1 billion?
Well, I don't even know where to start to guess.
This will be the 10th anniversary of over $1 billion in sales during Prime Day events. 2015 was the last Prime Day that had less than $1 billion in revenue during the sales event.
Has anyone compared what that is? What an average 2-day period would sell on Amazon? Like, have we seen it spliced that way?
No, but we could figure it out.
Yeah.
I hate doing math in public, but 14,900 multiplied by 60, multiplied by 24 times 2. The average 2-day period on Amazon should be somewhere around 2.5 billion.
The normal 2-day period.
Normal 2-day period should be around 2.5 billion. So it is a multiplier of 5 for Prime Day. That's 2023 numbers. So it could be closer to a multiplier of 6 now.
I wouldn't have guessed it would have that much of an impact, because I'm kind of numb to Prime Day. Even back when I remember pre-seller days too, it was just it was nothing to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Amazon's quarterly revenue has grown every single year since 2005. They have not taken a quarter off without some growth. Amazon now makes $14,900 per second, or $894,000 per minute, and over $53 million per hour. Seller stats. There are 6 million third-party sellers globally. 1.1 million of those are in the U.S. Now, I need to take a second and say this. Not all of those sellers are active. So that's just active seller accounts. The number that have actually sold anything is lower. 89% of those sellers use FBA, while 32% also use FBM, merchant fulfilled. 87% of sellers are self-reportedly profitable. However, 31% earn under $500 a month. But on the flip side, 10% make between $25,000 and $250,000 a month. I believe that is top line revenue, not actual profit in your pocket. But I'm not 100% sure. It wasn't super clear. All right. However, Pareto principle right at work right there. The average Amazon seller, if you average those numbers out, make around $200,000 a year in revenue. Sourcing, they say, is still dominated by China. 74% of sellers rely on it. So there's obviously a bit of a private label slant to this article, or where they got their data. More than 3,700 new sellers join Amazon daily. Big fall off in the number of sellers too. So they don't have numbers like that though. Over 50%, and this is actually incorrect. So let me just go ahead and fix this in real time. Over 60% of total Amazon sales now come from third-party sellers. And I actually saw an ad on Reels. I saw an Instagram ad from Amazon stating that fact from some person. I think they had some lady who owns a brand create an ad with them, and she said that. Third-party sellers contribute over $80 billion a year to Amazon's bottom line. Jeff Bezos thanks you for your fees. 51% of product searches start on Amazon compared to 39% starting on Google. 21% of that 39% is just arbitrage sellers doing lookups for OA products. 69%, nice, of all clicks happen on page 1 of Amazon's search results. And the top reasons that people shop on Amazon: 80% fast and free shipping, 69% wide product selection. Interesting. There is your moat, arbitrage sellers. 65.7% Prime membership perks. Fast and free shipping is going to be one of those, but all you've got to do is spend $25 or $35 to get fast and free shipping. So they're obviously talking about other Prime membership perks. That's going to be TV, music, all of those other things that come with a Prime membership, which is only getting better over time. We're now getting medical things in our Prime membership, which is going to just deepen the relationship. And there's another moat for you. 49.2% of customers come because of competitive pricing. That's obviously true. Everybody who says that they've had a price tank will say that it is overly competitive. And 43.7% shop there because of easy returns. Now, I want to talk a little bit about geographic breakdown. North America contributed $352.8 billion in revenue. This is 2023 numbers. That's the latest numbers they had for this particular article, which is about 61% of total sales. All right. It was about 131.2 billion from international marketplaces. The top international marketplaces, Chris, I want you to take a guess. What do you think is the second largest marketplace behind the US?
Second largest marketplace. Brazil.
Not even in the top 4. I don't know if it's in the top 5 or not. I did not think this. I thought it was the UK. Germany is the largest international marketplace at 37.6 billion. The UK comes in second at 33.6 billion. Japan comes in third at 26 billion. India comes in fourth at 17 billion. And Amazon India now gets over 286 million monthly visits, which is more than Amazon UK, Amazon Germany, or Amazon France. So India is obviously going to be growing. I would imagine I think they need to do some work on their logistics there. But I thought those were interesting numbers.
Yeah.
And then finally,
I assume Amazon China is just kind of grouped with Amazon US, right?
That's a good question. Lastly, employee and infrastructure. 1.5 million Amazon employees as of Q1 2024. It's actually down from a peak of 1.6 million in 2021, but up 135% since 2018. Amazon has deployed over 750,000 robots into fulfillment centers, and robots like Vulcan and Proteus now handle, at some point in the process, 75% of all orders at Amazon.
That's impressive.
Yeah. And Vulcan apparently can count that there are 327 toothpicks on the ground, just like I can. So, all right. And if you haven't seen Rain Man, you should watch it. Excellent movie. Excellent movie.
It's overrated.
You think so?
It's got Tom Cruise stink on it, so it's
okay.
It's got a low ceiling in my opinion.
I can understand that. All right. One other piece of news. refunds, reversals, and lawsuits. Amazon is being sued by customers who say their refunds were reversed weeks after returning products, and now a federal judge has ruled that the case is going to proceed. The core tenet of this lawsuit is all about Amazon's advanced refund policy. This policy lets customers get their refund before Amazon receives the item back. But if the item doesn't show up or it's returned damaged, Amazon can recharge the customer's account, sometimes weeks later. That's the thing that triggered the lawsuit. Plaintiffs state that they followed the return instructions. Excuse me while I heavily roll my eyes at that statement. Amazon says they either never got the item or it was damaged or improperly labeled. And a federal judge refused to dismiss the case despite Amazon asking for it, calling the plaintiff's claim plausible. Sounds like somebody who went through a bad Amazon return, if you ask me. Might ask that judge to recuse themselves. Even suggesting Amazon may have stolen money directly from their bank accounts. This guy obviously had something go wrong with Amazon. Both sides were ordered to update the court, and consumer groups are now starting to weigh in. Amazon has officially said that returns can take up to 30 days to process, and customers must use the correct label, the correct drop-off, and ensure the item is in its original condition. Consumer experts are recommending that consumers keep proof of their drop-off for months so that they can fight these things. And you might be thinking, this is a cool story, bro, but I'm the one getting returns. I'm not sending them. Well, here's why you should care, all right? Number one, if this becomes a big deal, buyers could second guess Amazon's refund process. If that erodes trust, which I highly doubt this actually will, but if it did, return rates could actually go up a bit. Well, because that's how consumers are. And two, if Amazon loses this case or changes policy for some reason, well, maybe advanced refunds disappear. Not necessarily against that change myself, but that could slow down how quickly maybe you get reimbursed for a return that is sent back incorrectly. Or it could make it so that Amazon makes us end up eating all returns altogether to try to be even more customer centric, because that is Amazon's core policy, is being the world's most customer centric company. And if you're a seller doing OA and RA and you're returning unsellables or you're returning bad buys to retail stores, well, first, I'm looking down my nose at you. You do better, all right? But secondly, if some sort of legal precedent is set in this case, well, it could bleed over, all right? If people follow the leader, and Amazon is the retail leader at the moment. So this could cause retailers to crack down on refund abuse or change refund policies altogether. And that's not unheard of. We've actually seen it, especially among companies that are high use for resellers. Frontier Co-op. That's our fault, is why they changed their refund policy. All right. So yeah, this is interesting. I'm very curious who wins on this.
Yeah, and I'm kind of, I almost have trouble figuring out who to root for, you know?
Yeah.
Because you can see good and bad resulting from either way it goes. But I think overall, I think the last part of what you said is truly what I'm rooting for, is for this to spill in further into the industry. You know, I think we've, you know, their heart was in the right place, but you know, the returns have become just beyond past the point of no return. Unintended pun. You know, but it's just it can't continue on like this. You know, it's taken too much of a hit from all retailers, you know, arbitrage sellers included. You know, it's become too painful. So you know, I'm kind of rooting for, you know, if a company, you know, Amazon's a big enough company to get cracked over the head over something about returns, and if that sets a precedent, and everybody else falls in line, and overall industry wide the return policies tighten up, that is probably not only a good thing but necessary at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. I mean, honestly, returns are ridiculous. Some of the returns that I see for stuff that's like unreturnable is insane. When we're coming up with terms like friendly fraud to talk about returns, it's it's gotten too far. And social media fans the flames and tells people here's how to get here's how to get stuff for free from Amazon. And I don't know, maybe that is one of the reasons why Amazon seems to be on this campaign lately of, hey, it's not Amazon, it's 60% third party sellers, but trying to get that into the brain of the average consumer. I think you're fighting a serious uphill battle there.
Yeah. Speaking of, Amazon's going to be forced to define themselves here soon, right? Are they a seller or are they a mall, like they like to say when it's convenient for them?
Yeah,
it's
yeah. This will be interesting. Yeah, we're gonna have an interesting year ahead of us as this lawsuit gets closer. I think. Well, both of these lawsuits, this one and the one against the FTC. All right.
Yeah.
Again, guys, one more reminder. We are going to get to your questions in just a moment, but on Sundays, and make sure to drop them in the chat. We'll get there. On Sundays, we like to expand our brains a little bit. And so today we're going to talk about the principle of parsimony for Amazon sellers. It's also known as Occam's razor, but for operators. Okay. So in plain English, the simplest solution that gets the job done is often the best. Okay. And the reason I bring this up is I have been seeing some incredibly complex like sourcing strategies and stuff like that. Very much the midwit meme going on. You got new sellers, I'm just going to storefront stock. And you got sellers who are kind of in the middle, and they're like, no, I need 37 different checkpoints across my sourcing list. And then you got the longtime sellers who are like, just look at more products. But in online arbitrage, this principle of parsimony it's a profit lever. Okay. Parsimony is about building a business that's lean, so you don't waste resources. It's efficient so that you can move fast, and it's focused so you don't drown in all the noise. Okay. So we want fewer assumptions. We want fewer moving parts. We want fewer distractions, but we need more clarity. We need more speed. And of course, everyone wants more profit. We're in a world where there is no lack of tools, and there's always a need for another spreadsheet or a VA system or some sort of multi-tab dashboard. Well, the people who are running some big businesses are often really simplifying everything. So let's talk about some real examples here. Okay. We'll talk about 4 areas where you can leverage this in your business. Sourcing, number 1. A bad example might be, well, you've got 10 tools, you're using 10 different sourcing tools. You've got a dozen tabs open. You're running searches at 3 a.m. and at stores you barely know, and things like that. Bad. A good example would be to use 1 or 2 tools. You could use something like RevSeller, and maybe you throw in, Tactical Arbitrage. Or if you don't like Tactical Arbitrage, you throw in Storefront Stalker Pro, or, there's a bunch of tools, but take it from 10 down to 1 or 2 that you're actually going to use. Make sure that you're filtering based on what your actual KPIs are, So let's say you're doing a tactical arbitrage scan, for example. I would go wide open on the filters on the front end, and on the back end, then I would start setting up some filters to only look at what I'm really, really interested in, and get rid of all the extra. Okay. And then you just do that daily. over and over and over again. And what happens when you do that, rather than, going to this tool and that tool and this third tool and the fifth tool, well, you end up making faster decisions. You actually end up missing fewer deals because you're not overlooking things, jumping to and fro. And you might actually enjoy sourcing again. You can kind of get into that flow state. Number 2, inventory management. A bad example would be you've got 5 different spreadsheets. You're using some sort of complicated forecast demanding software, but really you're still just guessing. Okay. A good example would be try to use whatever built-in Amazon reports you possibly can that are actually helpful. Not all of them are. Maybe you use some sort of simple third-party tool that gives you some alerts for aging inventory or fast-moving inventory. And you should end up with a little bit of less admin, hopefully lower storage fees. And for anybody who's focusing on replenishing product, fewer stockouts. Number 3, pricing. Really bad example is like manually changing your prices every 4 hours. I don't see Corey in here, but if you watch the replay, buddy, that one is aimed directly center mass at you, sir. Absolute waste of your time. A good example would be to set some sort of automated repricing rule. I don't care whether you're using Aura, you're using Smart Repricer, you're using Seller Snap. Pick a really good software that's out there. Make sure that you are setting up your rules or strategies the way that you want them, and then review those maybe once or twice a week. I don't think that you need to be in there every single day. However, I will give a little caveat to that. Until you get to a certain size. Jeff Storch talks about getting pretty granular with repricing. When you're doing $25 million a year, I think it makes sense. It makes sense to have someone babysitting, 2,500, 4,000 ASINs to make sure that you're moving inventory and things aren't getting, stuck somewhere. That makes sense. You got 150 ASINs in your store, your software will handle it. It'll be okay if you just review it once a week. And then 4th, decision making. All right. Bad example. You got 23 different metrics per ASIN, that you're trying to use to predict every variable that may happen. A better example, you focus on like 3 core metrics. Maybe what's your profit per sale? What's the estimated sales velocity? How quickly do you think you can turn over the inventory? And then maybe for a 4th, like, can I sell it? Okay. And if it doesn't hit those benchmarks, you move on as fast as possible. Sourcing is not necessarily about finding the good products faster. It's about eliminating the bad products faster, which will get you to the good products as a byproduct. Right. The result of that should be less paralysis and more execution. There's a quote that says complexity is the enemy of execution. And that is 100% true. So think of parsimony like this. Amazon really favors fast. They favor fast moving inventory. Matter of fact, they actually want you within a range nowadays. Okay. And if you can see that in your metrics, like they want you above 2 turns a month pretty much. But they want you like less than 4 turns a month. And Amazon, Jeff actually even talks about Amazon turns in his shareholder letters, which we've got a heck of an episode coming for you guys on shareholder letters. But he's really happy that Amazon moved from 12 inventory turns to 16 inventory turns per year. All right. Excuse me. Arbitrage sellers who scale, I don't think they're really the ones who are doing more. I think they're the ones that are doing less, but they do it better. Like that's how you create a business that runs lean, allows you to adapt quickly, and grows. Right. To quote Sean Purry, one of my favorite podcasters, complex systems break, Simple systems scale. But Chris, here is my question to you. I appreciate when you sometimes push back. Is there a risk in going too simple? And do you think complexity creeps back in over time?
Yeah. You have to look at how much time you're spending, and then you have to look at how much you truly know your information, right? Because you can't go simple if you don't really understand the process fully, because then too much is going to fly by, or go over your head. You're just not going to be aware of it. So yeah, so there's certainly a way of doing it too simple. That's how big errors get discovered far too late, and that's what gets a lot of sellers in trouble sometimes. You can't get too cavalier about how much you automate, and we've said it over and over again, with things like hiring a VA. People try to automate sourcing before they're really proficient, so that would be an example of automating something, or simplifying something, that it's for the wrong reasons. So in that sense, I would say, yeah, absolutely. And you know what? Honestly, there's a reason that there are companies out there that will analyze your subscriptions and find out if you're paying for 3 different Netflix subscriptions. Because we can't handle all that. Like automation. There's a fine line between efficiency and blindness when it comes to automation. Because at a certain level, I remember most of my life I couldn't fathom how somebody would have redundant subscriptions, just have two Netflix accounts. And then apparently at some point, my opinion changed when I realized that we were paying for HBO Max twice. So I had a bit of a reckoning with that. So I don't know where the point was, because I wasn't aware of it when it happened, but there's a certain point. So you have to be careful with automation. It's use it to become more efficient, but you have to remain aware, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, Occam's razor is always one of my favorites. I try to explain that to my son all the time, and he's like, but why? All right. Juan with the first question here. And Chris, I believe this is for you based on the chat about the VA, but do you have a team lead among your VAs? If not, that helped me a lot when I had 4, because I would meet up with him and he would talk to them, as well as monthly meetings where we would go through the top 3 mistakes with the whole team and go from there. Juan, you sound like a good manager.
Yeah. And if you got any more tips, I'm all ears, because you sound certainly better than me. Well, here's the problem, Juan. The guy I'm talking about was the one I was trying to groom into being team lead. He seems most of the time he's the most skilled. Like I mentioned, he's the longest tenured, which kind of makes the decision easier, I guess, or simpler, I guess. That was the problem. I mean, I was kind of counting on him, and like he's been with me. Like he's ultimately a good guy, and I'd love for him to be the team lead. It would be unfortunate it doesn't solve the problem that I started the show off with, of course. But like he's such a good guy. My mom only knows his name, but she loves the guy just based on the stories that I've told when we get together. How's Mark? And I have to, it's like, oh, she's talking about my Filipino employee. Like, you better make sure you ask about each of the kids first, Mom.
Right.
So yeah, that I don't know, whether I have whether my standards are too high or maybe I'm just a micromanager and I can't give up certain things. Um, I can't like the skill level never got to the point, and I've never had a VA that had the skill level to where I felt confident that I could give a degree of authority as full on team lead. You know, um,
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to, and I get very, very jealous when I hear people with long time VAs, and how much they can trust, and some of the duties that they have them doing, and I can't. It seems like a point so far away from where I am. So I don't know. I don't know whether I'm just a bad boss / trainer, or I'm not putting enough faith in them.
I'm
Maybe both.
Yeah, I'm there. I'm there with you. Yeah, I think I'm in the exact same boat. I've been at this a long time. I've had VAs for a long time, but one, I tend not to give over enough. I don't delegate enough. It's probably my own need for control. But I'm also, I find myself to be a very, very poor manager. Uh,
Mhm.
Not that I don't want to be better. I don't think that I do well. And, you know, I don't know, maybe there's some imposter syndrome. I'm sure I could talk to a therapist about this for weeks and figure out why the issue is there. But, then I see people like Soros, and he basically runs his, $10 million a year OA business on VAs with like 2 hours of his time. They're doing buying, they're doing repricing, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't know what his margins are, but even if his margins are 3% at the end of the day, like for 2 hours a week on a $10 million business, that's all right. I'd be okay with that.
Yeah. It's still a great hourly wage.
Yeah. Kelly, yeah. I absolutely needed some ointment for that burn from Wyatt this morning. It was much better than his usual. That burn this morning was on the back of Dad, you sound like AI. And I'm like, what are you talking about, man? He's like, well, the words you use. He's like, you're telling me that we're scheduled to arrive at our destination by 7:14 a.m. And I'm like, well, that's what it is. We're scheduled to arrive I'm like, what am I supposed to say? And he's like, I don't know. He's like, you're just doing too much. And I'm like, okay. I,
Listen, kid. Like the stuff AI says is modeled after how we talk. like
right?
these are all words that they're actually available to us humans too.
Yeah.
It's out of our own supply.
There are more responses than just bruh.
Right. There was did you see that article? I forget who it was. It the Atlantic? Maybe it was one of the bigger publications. They actually it was about AI has made the college, or they made term papers obsolete, right? Because
Hmm,
just the
that
AI is
makes
so
sense.
easy to use, so hard to detect. Yeah, absolutely. And it was actually at one point in the article, they actually talked about how difficult it's becoming for people with decent vocabularies because they're being accused of being AI. I mean, it's the educational version of the story you just told. That's happening to students who are writing these pieces, and they're actually they're getting confused. Actual writing, 100% human content is getting mistaken for AI now.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, here's
Mm.
something interesting. Uh, you know, Before AI existed, there were VAs overseas who were writing essays and term papers for college kids. Some of them, not
Mhm.
all of them, but that market in 2022 was valued at around 1.8 billion dollars. I
Mm.
wonder what AI has done to that, because they were expecting that to grow 10% a year until about 2030. And I bet you that number's just been absolutely slashed.
Yeah, yeah, boy, that's it's a big old horse farm right around the time Henry Ford was getting his factory running, right?
Right. I'm not going to try to say this name, Kasim, hopefully, Kasim Ecom. Hey, we do online arbitrage on a US account and source from retailers whose invoice Amazon does not accept. What will we do when Amazon refers us for invoices? Well, I don't know what you mean. Okay. Because and people will tell you, oh, well, Amazon doesn't accept Target or they don't accept Walmart or this or that. Well, those people are honestly uninformed and they're just telling you wrong information. Now, are receipts and invoices from Target and Walmart and things like that going to get you ungated anymore? No, not necessarily. Maybe, but maybe not. That's the gray area. Okay. But I have beat a Section 3. I have beat multiple IP complaints, multiple inauthentic complaints with receipts, order confirmations, shipping confirmations, delivery confirmations, all from online stores, some of them from places that I guarantee less than 20% of people here on this live have ever heard of. There's one place where it might just be Chris and I that know of this place. It's just a very, very niche site. And they've all worked. So part of it is how you present the data. And the other part is don't source from AliExpress or places like Frugo, Fruugo, or you buy Tajikistan, like don't source from those places. Source from legitimate retailers. Find out if they've got a physical location. Like Walmart, easy. Target, easy. Kohl's, simple. But that Jim's bait and tackle shop. Well, is it being run out of an apartment complex, or is it literally a bait and tackle shop on a country road in the middle of Kentucky? If it's on that country road in the middle of Kentucky and they've got an actual LLC, it actually wouldn't bother me to buy from them because worst case scenario, I'm going to be able to show, hey, Jim Bob here actually does. He's got more LLCs than teeth. And here's all the proof.
Does he use his formal name, James Robert? When
he does use his formal name. It's James Robert. That's right.
You know what? I kind of feel bad. Like, we've covered variations of that scenario over and over again on the show. And I do feel bad for some of the like newer sellers coming on, because we've talked about, and it's probably of little consolation to the people that have the issue, that are bringing up the questions. But we've talked about how gating is essentially going back to the way it was several years ago, because it got real easy, got too easy for a period of time. But to that question, so you're going to have a bunch of sellers thinking that, oh, Amazon rejected this receipt from this retailer. So the thing to keep in mind is that Amazon's going to say no to just about everything. Unfortunately, if you're going by one denial and you're making a definitive determination on whether Amazon accepts receipts from that retailer or not, your number is going to be 0% of retailers are acceptable to Amazon, because they're going to turn down everything. They'll turn down Walmart. They'll turn down Amazon. They're turning down their own invoices. People who do an Amazon to Amazon flips that have some sort of issue with their account where they have to prove authenticity. I'm hearing stories where people are getting the Amazon invoice denied the first time. Mm-hmm. We are back to an environment where everything takes multiple tries, and 99% of the time when people say, I've tried a bunch of times already and I don't know what to do now, they didn't try enough. Even it's more than you think.
Yeah.
Like this business, there's a lot of that. Like it's more, sourcing new sellers. It's more than you think. Submissions more than you think.
Honestly, we've gotten soft, because and I hear people say, oh, well, there's easier ways to make money. I don't know about that. The nature of having to just try one more time and say that to yourself over and over and over again, that is the nature of being a business owner, period.
Mhm.
I remember selling insurance. I was forced to do a lot of things the old school way, because that's how my boss, my grandfather, came up. He came up pounding the pavement, knocking on doors, and so once or twice a month, I'd get a phone book, literally a phone book, dropped on my desk, open to a page, start dialing. Uh, you know, Once a month, let's go and knock on some office park doors. Let's go and knock on some apartment complex doors. And while we're at it, we'll just go and talk to the managers and see if we can get the insurance for all the apartments too. Um, you want to talk about being able to take rejection? Uh, that's a good way to do it. Go sell something door to door, and then just having to submit a picture of something 47 times, going to be a walk in the park.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Will, just got approved for my LLC, and I'm planning to jump straight into wholesale. I haven't created a Seller Central account yet. Will this help me get ungated more easily? No, not at all. There is a friend of the show. Matter of fact, actually, we'll talk about it off air. But friend of the show, Jeff Storch, actually told this story on Twitter not too long ago. $50,000 purchase order directly from a brand, letter of authorization, letter stating that they can sell these items on Amazon, invoice on a letterhead, rejected, cannot sell the brand, brand approval from the brand registered account. Nope, not approved to sell the brand. Amazon says no, period. So having your LLC going directly to wholesalers is not necessarily going to be the thing that gets you ungated. And here's why. Okay. You go to, Cletus's Convenience, Wholesale, and Discounters. Are they going to accept that over an invoice from Lowe's, an invoice from the Home Depot Pro Center? Are they going to, if they will reject those, why would they take Cletus's? So now I'm not saying that to scare you off. Okay. I'm just letting you know that the process for ungating is simple, not easy. And that's it. And then what other benefits come with starting this way? LLC first, wholesale model, anything else I should know before creating the account? Honestly, I actually think that you're at a disadvantage going directly into wholesale. I think personally that you should start some arbitrage, and because you don't know what you don't know yet. And so like you've never created a shipment. And if you don't know how to create a shipment and you talk to your distributor or supplier and say, hey, are you guys willing to send this stuff into Amazon for me? But you don't know how to send it into Amazon. How are you supposed to know if they do it correctly or what you're supposed to give them? Or if what they're charging you for any prep, if they do that, is in line with what prep should actually cost. Those are all things that you cannot know without doing it yourself first. And arbitrage will actually allow you to do this at a much smaller scale and get things figured out. It'll also give you a good lesson in rejection. And what I mean by that is it's not super easy to find profitable products. It's simple, okay, but it's a lot of work. And a lot of people go into wholesale, like directly from nothing to wholesale. I'm like, yeah, I should just call up any supplier. And when they tell me, yes, there's going to be profitable products. Not necessarily. You might have to go through 5, 10, 25 different suppliers before you find something that's actually profitable, especially if you're looking for suppliers with low MOQs. minimum order quantities, and so personally, I actually think having some arbitrage under your belt, knowing what a good listing is, what sells, what doesn't sell, how to create a shipment, all of those things is actually an advantage before getting into wholesale.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And although I will say, just to dip into one of the recent books that I've read, if you're an A type personality, like just a true A, like action immediately, whatever, you hear something, I don't care about the details, I'm just going to go do it. You might be all right. That's about the only personality type that could actually pull that off, where they LLC, like, all right, sweet, got it back from the state, and then immediately jump into wholesale. Those are about the only types of people that could pull that off, I think. Because you're, and not only that, everything Chris said, you're at a disadvantage. You also don't have enough rebuttals, so you're going into a scenario with a low success percentage, a low hit rate, which there's nothing wrong with that. Everything has a lower hit rate than a lot of people realize. But yours is going to be even lower because you don't have a collection of rebuttals to counter back with when you get the boilerplate answers, and you don't have enough skill to go to the next level, and counter their objection with a benefit, and make sure when it comes out, listen to our interview with Kaj. That'll be really interesting for you.
And good news, I've been saying this for like 2 weeks now, but we do have some good podcasts coming. I'm just waiting on thumbnails, and then I'm just gonna start releasing them. So we've got 4 good ones in the pipe. Let's see here. Maurice, what's going on, sir? This past week, 5 Friday finds referenced the post-tariff opportunity for arbitrage sellers. Could you expand on that? Yeah, absolutely. We are not feeling the squeeze yet from the almost stoppage at the ports when tariffs were in effect. So we're going to have this boomerang effect here. Okay. We threw out this boomerang of tariffs that were incredibly high, and you got to wait for a few minutes before you get knocked in the head with that boomerang. And that's going to be coming. What I mean by that is there were a lot of businesses who not everyone can be like Apple and throw 5 airplane loads of iPhones together in a weekend and get it over here to the US. Okay. So a lot of companies were like, hey, we got to put a hold on things. Okay. And they shut down. Well, you take a week off, and that adds weeks to the actual timeline of getting products to port, getting products to store, all of that stuff. And now that we've seen that US and China seem to be negotiating in good faith together, and we've seen a 90-day lowering of tariffs, well, what happened the minute that went into effect? Shipping costs skyrocketed for ships from China to the US. What does that mean? That means everybody was on the phone ordering products. So now what you're going to have happen is we know that demand is there, okay, and it is back up. Well, that's actually going to slow things down, okay? When supply or when demand outstrips the supply of boats and shipping lanes and things like that, things get stuck. It just happens. And is that then also going to clog up ports on the West Coast? Yeah, it very well might. And so where is that opportunity for us? Well, the opportunity for arbitrage sellers is the fact that we work on the margins, okay? If something people want is not readily available at places like Walmart, or at least Walmart online or on Amazon, well, we find it other places. Are there pockets of inventory out there from other online retailers? from that Walmart or Target rural Walmart or Target, from that Dollar General in the small town an hour away? Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen this happen one other time, COVID, when things shut down. Well, we had something very similar happen. And because we work on the margins, because we are the buzzards of the supply chain, we get to pick clean all those little places that other people are not looking, and then take advantage of that arbitrage opportunity. So now, when is this going to happen? I don't know, but it is going to like it's a foregone conclusion that there are going to be price increases, either due to companies charging for the tariffs that they did pay, or the fact that demand is outstripping supply while supply gets caught up. I just don't know how long that lasts. That's the thing I can't tell you. Frank, what are you guys paying on average shipping products under £1? And do you recommend Vico? I can answer that second question. Yes, Vico is a good tool, in my opinion. But how much do I average shipping products under £1? That's a tough question to answer because it depends on where you ship. So the last couple of things that I've shipped under £1 have all been under $5 in shipping. However, they were all east of the Mississippi. I haven't had to ship anything west of the Mississippi, which is where things tend to get a little bit more expensive, to make sure that I'm still getting them, say Oregon or Washington on time. And honestly, I just don't ship a lot of merchant fulfilled. I will for some eBay stuff. I do very, very little on Amazon, as little as I possibly can. Juan, I'd love to know your top 3 KPIs for both of you. Juan, I'm going to kick this down the road a little. I'm going to kick this can down the road just a touch. Let me think on this a little bit, and I'd be happy to touch on this either Wednesday or next Sunday, if that's okay. Chris, what about you?
Well, I don't know. I mean, thank you, Juan, for thinking that I'm that organized, that I would have a list of KPIs to review and pick a favorite 3. I just have stuff that I look at, and essentially, if I want to look at something that changes my perspective on stuff, right? And we were talking about it. I was thinking about it when we were talking about something earlier. When you were talking about the I don't even remember. But I was thinking about ruts, right? Getting specifically like the stuff you get stuck in sometimes, like stuck in a rut. With business, it's like being stuck in a rut is okay, because until something goes wrong, you don't really know you're stuck, right? You can just kind of, and another term for stuck in a rut before you actually stuck, I guess, is kind of wearing grooves, right? You just kind of, you have everything and eventually you wear grooves in your process, right? And then the deeper the groove gets, I don't know what point it becomes a rut, but essentially the sides of the tires are, have trouble moving left or right, so then once you have to pivot and you have to change something, that's what I don't know how that relates to what you were talking about, Chris. I can't even think about what question we were talking about, but it has to do with the willingness to keep learning or restart your learning. A lot of people are specifically when, like, if tariffs, if stuff starts getting expensive, and there's, you have a portfolio of products that you typically source, and some of those get prohibitively expensive. There have been multiple scenarios over the last half a year, at least, if not longer, to where it's an advantage to the sellers who are willing to relearn stuff, and go back to their education and learn how to source some different stuff, because things kind of got easy. You got into a rut, you wore the grooves, became a rut. And the people complaining are the ones who don't want to change their process. They don't want to have to go back to the beginner information and learn something new in Keepa, even though there's something new to learn in Keepa every single day for the rest of our lives. That thing is so powerful, right? They just kind of, you picked your 3 or 4 different ways to use Keepa, and that's just the way it's always been. So there's a big difference between sellers who are in that scenario, the ones that are willing to expand, go back to the OA challenge. You have access to those replays all the time. Learn some new Keepa tricks. Those sellers are going to be far better than the ones that just jump in FBA today and complain and say, oh, well, I don't know how to do anything else. It's like, well, whose fault is that? So, and Juan, you're probably wondering, what the hell does this have to do with my question? Essentially, I guess they are KPIs. I don't have them labeled as KPIs, but I like looking at stuff that changes my perspective, right? And it could be as simple as pulling up Seller Central on my phone and changing dollar volume to units, because I look at dollar volume. That's my default, and I'll look at that, and I've looked at it that way for a year straight. But it's a different story when you look at units. Maybe you just happen to find a bunch of stuff that's higher priced and your numbers look okay, and you're like, okay, I'm not working quite as hard, or you kind of feel like you're kind of mailing some of the stuff in, but your numbers are basically where they're supposed to be. If you flip it over to units, you could see some negative percentages compared month over month and year over year, and you go, oh no, I am slacking, and you're not going to realize it until you look at units. Another KPI that I like, that I know is a KPI, is my monthly nut. I like to, that Chris was talking about when he was talking about the was it parsimony?
Parsimony?
Yeah. He talked about tools, and that's a very tough thing to reckon with. And I find, by adding everything up that I pay per month and knowing what the number needs to be, what my minimum my break even profit needs to be, just based on tools and expenses and overhead, that's a serious wake up call. That's very effective to me, because I tend to have all this stuff, and I love my tools, and I don't know how to do something without this tool, because I've always had it, even though we're in a state of Amazon tools now to where the redundancy and the overlap it's pretty strong. There was much different time, not too long ago, to where you could make a case to having Rev Seller and Seller Amp, because they had distinct features that the other one didn't. And that's not the case anymore, really. I mean, the overlap it's almost just one circle on the Venn diagram now. And it's essentially a pick and choose which one you like better. But when I had both, it was very tough to get rid of the one, because it had some, I kind of like that. Another thing, Tactical Bucket. I need to reassess Tactical Bucket. I like it. I use it, but I'm pretty sure Keepa can do the vast majority of what I'm using Tactical Bucket for, So, and I say all that to kind of like, you look at the number as a whole, like, this is my monthly nut. This is what I need. And then you start parsing it out, and it forces you to kind of take a fresh look at the value that each thing that you are paying for, that your business is paying for, the value, the return that you're getting from each of those tools, because it's easy to get blind to that.
Absolutely. Kelly, when is the next OA challenge? Great question. Thank you for asking. Checks in the mail. July 7th is when the next OA challenge is. And I'm going to go ahead and put this on record right now. It is going to be a completely overhauled OA challenge. It is not going to look anything like it has in the past. It's going to be brand new. This is our lucky 13th OA challenge, coming July 7th. And I am putting in I am putting in some heavy work to make this better than it's ever been, to make it the undisputed best training platform to exist for retail and online arbitrage sellers, hands down. And it will be the best value in the game, period. Like full stop. It'll also be the last time that I charge $397 because this OA challenge is going to be so deep. So it's also going to be shorter. It's no longer going to be 14 days. It's going to be 7. But the amount that you're going to go away with after the 7 days is going to be double or triple what we go over in the 14 days. So hopefully everyone is ready to get their hair blown back a little bit. And hopefully I can deliver on that promise.
It's a concentrated dose. Did you hear the collective groan from all the gurus that are realized they're going to have to take it again to see if there's, they have to adjust what they've stolen from you already?
Yeah. Yep. It's all right. Frank, how are you guys tracking how efficient the VA works? You really can't. You can trust and verify. You can use software like Hubstaff or other software that will take screenshots of people's computers. But there are also ways to game that. So there's not really a perfect solution unless you want to sit for 8 hours with them sharing their screen to you, which is not, that's not the reason you have a VA. So I think personally, I'll be quite frank, I don't really care how efficient someone is when they work. I prefer results. There's this story or parable about this guy. And the guy says, the guy's a marketer. He comes up with marketing campaigns, marketing slogans, things like that. Client wants to hire him, and he says, "Hey, yeah, happy to take your business. It's $10,000. It's how much I charge. We'll get you a new ad. We'll get you a tagline, etc." And the business owner says, "Man, how long do you think it's going to take you?" And he's like, "I'll have you something back in a week. And in that week's time, probably going to put about 20 hours on it." He's like, "But I'm going to bring you back something that is just top-notch choice. You're going to love it. I guarantee it. Matter of fact, it's in my contract. You love it or you don't pay." Business owner says, "I'm not really interested in that. I'd much rather pay you by hour." And the marketer goes and says, "Nope, no thanks. I don't do business that way." The guy says, "Well, you're only going to put 20 hours in." He's like, "Even if I paid you, $250 an hour, that's less than the $10,000. I don't want that." Well, you're not paying for those 20 hours. You're paying for all the time it took to get as good as that person is. And I think a VA is the same way. A VA is worth their weight in pay if they are good, if they're trainable. And if they only spend 4 hours doing 8 hours worth of work, I don't care. As long as their results align with my expectations or better.
Yeah. Frank, I will tell you 2 things that I did. And look, I think we have to be pretty careful with this. Because if we put too strong demands on the VAs, you don't want them resorting to something that is on a larger scale counterproductive, right? You don't want them to have so much pressure that they call up their other VA friends and they try to start pooling leads, and then all of a sudden, there's multiple sellers are getting leads that they assumed were only going to them, right? You don't want them to resort to cutting corners, essentially. but the two things that I did that had tangible improved results. The one was I started doing a scoring system, and it's essentially what Chris said, keeping score, but it's the same concept. Because my VAs will put their leads on the shared spreadsheet, so it all goes in there, and then I review them, and then I give them a grade. It's either yes, it's a good lead. Sometimes it's a maybe. If they're allowed to hit 2 of the 3 criteria that I set. Those would be a maybe. It's got redeemable qualities. I might still buy it. It's still in the mix. Or no. Yes, no, or maybe. Those are the three grades that they get. I started assigning a scoring system, and I gave them a minimum that they have to hit every week, a minimum score. I did 1 point for the good leads, and then they'll get a quarter point for a maybe, 0 points for no. And then I just said, it started out at 7, but when I gave them a raise the last year, I said, I think it's fair that we can expect a little bit higher skill level, as time goes on. So I moved that up to 8. So, and then I just, once I get through everything, I just add everything up, and I put their scores right on their timesheet that they mark their hours down. And that was great for me, because now I had an actual number. I could actually monitor improvements. I could monitor dips. It made everything more measurable, instead of just kind of going by feel.
First of all, I realize how many words I said to answer Frank's question, and maybe why it is right. Maybe I am doing too much. But secondly, show me the incentives and I'll show you the outcome. We both know that's a Charlie Munger quote. With your scoring system, do you have any sort of incentive in place to go along with that scoring system? And if not, let me just tell you what I was thinking while you were talking. Minimum score needs to be X. But if you get to score X, well, here is an extra 1 hour's pay, or here is I don't want to say multiplier, because a multiplier can get tricky pretty fast, but here is an extra hour's pay, or something like that.
Yeah, I kind of go like the Princess Bride route, keep it green or I'll fire you. I like to rule with fear mainly. My kids would agree with that. No, but no, I've made a point to, I don't have anything definitive. However, I will go back through the weeks and I will kind of periodically manufacture a random incentive. I look back and there was a 4-week period, 4 weeks in a row. They were all green. Everybody hit their number, so essentially the equivalent of a month. So I kicked them something extra in their pay. It ended up being a few hours additional, so yeah. And then, I've also used a scoring system to fire someone that needed to go. So yeah, it's beneficial.
Beautiful.
Both sides.
I am going to, we'll talk off air. I'm going to implement a scoring system, and there will be carrots and sticks involved, I think, on a weekly basis. So yeah. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Yeah, Kelly, I hear that a lot. Yeah. We're all doing too much. Charlie, congratulations, man. Just got notification that your reply to the parallel import issue was accepted. Honestly, I'm not even sure I know exactly what the parallel import issue is, but I'm glad you got over it. That's fantastic. Never a good time when Amazon's stating your account's going to be terminated.
I don't know what it is either. It sounds serious. Glad you got through it.
Right.
Parallel
Jack.
import. It sounds like something from a Marvel movie.
Yeah. Jack, how big sellers are you guys? 8, 9, 10 figures, I imagine. You, sir. You flatter us.
Jack,
uh,
Jack, tell me how. I don't even know how to imagine a 10-figure seller. Tell me how to do that. Like,
yeah.
what even is that?
No, I appreciate that. No, definitely nowhere near, the biggest seller, nowhere near some of the sellers that we've had on the podcast. I use the excuse that I've got a bunch of irons in the fire, and maybe that is a little bit of an excuse. But I make sure that the Amazon business can sustain, and then everything else that I do is extra. It's kind of where I tell people, but I usually don't throw out numbers. I'd rather the quality of the education and the content that we provide to do the speaking, rather than orange bars. Honestly, I could say, hey, yeah, I'm going to do 5 million this year, and it could be at a negative margin, just for the orange bars, and that's no good at all.
It could be a negative perception. If you have a segment of your audience that assumes you are, what would that be, 8 figures, and you said something in 7 figures, there's no good reason to answer that question.
Yeah.
Like I found, and it's, and the people, if you don't like us, you're going to think that we're hiding and we're just like, whoa, the people that can't teach, or something like that. But, which there's a pushback on that as well. But, and then other people, it can work the other way too. It's like, oh, I didn't realize they were doing all that. And then it changes the relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
how can they help me as a new person when they haven't been new for a decade?
Yeah.
Is one of the issues. And I'll tell you this though, we're students of the game, period.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the mindset that we take to bring the information over here, is just being a constant student of the game, not only just Amazon, but of business in general. The amount of information that I take in on a weekly basis to be able to do these shows on Sundays and Wednesday is a lot. Matter of fact, for this Monday's podcast episode that we're recording, I read 49,810 words to get ready for it. So let's see here. I'm in, Kelly. Fantastic. Sign up on the website. Not yet. It's not open yet. We'll get that open probably about 2 weeks before we go live with the OA challenge. Jeff, what is the best solution to track OA inventory from purchase to Amazon payout? There's not like a perfect solution that exists. It's part of the problem. It doesn't exist. Like, would it be awesome if there was a system that you could just pay monthly to, and you put in your orders and your tracking numbers, and it lets you know like everything got delivered to where it's supposed to be, and then your prep center went in there and told you, hey, this is how many we received, and this is how many were damaged, etc. And then after that, that's where you create shipments, and it tells you, oh, hey, here's how many are missing that Amazon couldn't find or Amazon damaged. And then after that, it actually had some real accounting that you could use to actually do your taxes with. That would be amazing, but that doesn't exist. So there's a buy sheet that I use. It keeps all the information on the purchase. And then there is a system with the prep center that keeps track of items on the way to the prep center, what's actually been delivered, what's still on the way, what's been damaged, any notes, if there is a return. So we don't do returns unless it was distributor damaged, meaning from the retailer, or they send the wrong things. We don't return bad buys. Okay. And then, there is Inventory Lab or Boxem to help you create shipments and do some inventory tracking. And then you need QuickBooks to actually be able to give yourself a real profit and loss statement with all of your OPEX, CAPEX, etc. Whereas Inventory Lab, it'll tell you, hey, here's what your P&L is. But if you're not putting your OPEX in there, you're not putting in every single one of your numbers, it's not going to be quite right. And there's no way to reconcile that in an accounting fashion like there is in QuickBooks. So you've either got to piece all these things together across multiple tools, or you need to create your own spreadsheet to do all of these things, which again is its own headache, because I cheated my way through Excel class in college and still barely passed. So
Yeah, Jeff, unfortunately, the correct answer to your question, what is the best solution to track OA inventory from purchase to payout, is step by step. If you truly want that end number cradle to grave, you need to stay up on each part of it and just make sure it's documented. So, however, Chris, have you ever needed that exact number very often?
Well, here's the thing. Okay. We get, and this was something that was actually bred into me as a kid. And then I did some reading and I learned that it's not the case, but taxes are like horseshoes and hand grenades. You just got to be close. Like, you're not going to go to prison if you're off by a couple hundred or a couple thousand or a couple $10,000. The problem is going to come if you are willfully trying to commit fraud. Okay, that's what Wesley Snipes did. He willfully committed fraud and didn't pay the taxes. You make a mistake, you can fix it. And so, no, you don't really need to know down to the penny, at least for the tax man. And honestly, on the P&L, my opinion is it needs to be directionally accurate so that you can make good decisions in your business. But I mean, come on, we all read those reports about job creations, from the government. And then 2 months later, it's oh, hey, we just revised that number down 30%. It can be the same way in your business.
Yeah. And from a replenishment standpoint, okay, what was good, what wasn't. Even then, if you just get the general idea, in a test buy, if you bought 10 and and say 2 of them were returned, is it a 20% return rate? I doubt it. You probably just caught more than your fair share this time. So then those 2 returns probably turn that number into a negative. However, there may be something worthwhile to where, that doesn't necessarily mean that you had 2 of the 10 returned. You took a loss on that test buy of 10. That doesn't guarantee that you're kicking that ASIN out forever. There may be reasons that you still want to replenish your supply. And obviously it works the other way. You could get something that none of them were returned. The numbers were great. The first 10 went great. It's yet to be determined what the return rate's going to be if you re-up and send in another 20, so the exact number, of how something worked out, a general idea usually gets stuff done depending on why you want that number, what you're looking for, that what the motivation is.
I've got a really good example. I've got an item sitting right over here. I'm going to eBay it rather than sending it back into Amazon, although I could. This one particular item, the return rate's 150%. Bought 6 of them. They all got returned. I sold through all of them again, and now I've got 2 sitting here. The return rate was ridiculous. However, if this item was still available, I would actually buy more because I'm actually still positive on the ASIN. cash flow wise, even though I've got 2 sitting here. These 2 are still in new condition. I could send them back into Amazon. I think I'm just going to throw them on eBay because the price is pretty good there as well. But if I could replenish it, I would, because I know that I just got unlucky. If I could have bought 20, the return rate would have been nowhere near 150%. It would have been closer to the 15 to 20% that category actually, has.
Yep.
Frank, scores are a great way to keep track. We'll DM you guys my solution. Look forward to it, man. Would love to take a gander. Jeff, just subscribed to the 365 service that includes Inventory Lab. Does the repricer included Rival Go Aura? So I've tested Smart Repricer, and I do think it does a pretty good job. My suggestion is that you take your time setting up your rules. Make sure that they're right. Okay. They have some built-in strategies that you can use. That's fine if you want to test one of those. But I would use a custom strategy. That way it does exactly what you want for the different things you're looking to do. Like my regular strategy is one way, but then my liquidation strategy is another, and then we may have a third or a fourth. Like Jeff Storch, he's got like 25 strategies, so like it just depends on what you're trying to do. If you've got some things that are high dollar and big ticket, and you're willing to hold on to those a little bit longer, maybe have a strategy for those, etc. I will say that on some things, Aura has done better, and on other things, Smart Repricer has done better. Like on some older inventory where Maven just didn't seem to reprice, I could have gone to a manual strategy, and that probably would have done the trick. Smart Repricer just handled it, but again, it's a more of a manual strategy than it is allowing just AI to use game theory than anything else. So I'm a big fan of Aura. Dylan knows that. Hard to beat the value of having what I think is a good repricer built into Seller 365. Akbar, selling shoes in generic boxes. Is it okay? Any experience? The answer to this is sometimes. I think that you should put a dollar limit on what you will sell in generic boxes. So for example, if you're going to sell a $200 pair of Jordans, I would not put them in generic boxes. I would want to make sure that the box comes with it, because it may be going to a collector. If you're selling a pair of $120 Hokas or a $120 pair of, whatever, Nike Air Maxes, a generic box should be just fine. Not really a big deal. Especially the ones that Amazon, the generic boxes Amazon uses says something on the box, and I can't remember exactly what it says, but it like gives a reason why it's a generic box without saying that it's a reason. And you're kind of like, oh, that makes sense. They used this rather than the regular packaging, even though it's exactly the same thing. So I would go that route. I'd try to get those sort of boxes if you're going to use them. So, Chris, I got pulled over last night. Yeah, suck. I'm having a little bit of a rough weekend with, with Wyatt and the police, but the police officer walks up and knocks on the window. I roll it down and I say, "Yes, officer." And he says, "Sir, I'm going to have to write you a ticket." I'm like, "Why?" The officer's like, "Well, you're driving alone in the carpool lane." And I look at him and I said, "Just wait till you see what's in the trunk."
It's good to keep police on their toes, right?
That's right. That's right. There's jokes on Sundays too. Absolutely. This is a full. We are full service here, my friend. All right. That's the show for today. We'll be back on Wednesday at 5:30 for probably a shorter format show. But if you've got more questions later this week and want to hear some more news, we'd love to see you at 5:30 on Friday. Amir, I'm married, sir, but I do appreciate this. I do appreciate that very much. All right. Have a great week, everybody. That's the show.